Okay.
There we go. Great. So having it at 4:05, why don't we go ahead and get started? All right. Welcome to today's Disability Justice meeting. Today we're going to have a presentation on CPACs, Special Education Parent Advisory Councils. Alice, I wonder if you could you post the agenda in the chat? Great. And I'll take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Liz Carney. I'm in Shelburne. I'm a parent of two children. One is on an IEP, one is on a 504. In the past year, I have been a founding member of the CVSD CPAC, and so I've been there from the beginning. And I'm pleased to have this talk about what CPACs are, what their functions are, how they serve the community, and specifically how we started the Champlain Valley CPAC and things that we learned along the way. My co-host today is Palace Zipperin. I wonder if you could take a minute to introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. I am Palace Zaporin. Sorry, I am trying to also post our agenda, which I will get to after I
Sorry.
introduce myself. I am a parent and an advocate. I live in South Burlington. I have three kids. Three boys, ages 10, 7, and 3. I have been involved in special education for some time based off of my own parenting journey. And I also have a background in education policy. I'm a former school board member, which was a role I held before kind of being aware of some of these special education issues that I'm now extremely passionate about. And I'm happy to be here co-hosting with Liz and hearing more about her phenomenal work with launching a very successful CPAC. And I think that it is an inspiration that many of us can bring back to our own districts.
Thanks so much. I wonder if everyone here would like to take a minute to introduce themselves in the chat. Um, Maybe introduce yourself and if you'd like to kind of give a quick reason why you're here, why you think this might be an important topic to delve into, or anything you want. No pressure. Great. As those start to filter in, let me take a minute and get this presentation booted up. Whoop. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Oh, it's great to see everybody chiming in the chat. Thank you so much. Okay. Let me go ahead and share screen. Host tools. Share screen. Great. Here we go. You all see that? Okay. Thanks. Can you just see the presentation or can you see what's outside, like the
It's
periphery?
just the presentation, it looks good.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Okay. Um, so um, so today I want to talk about um, what are CPACs? So really when I think about CPACs in the community, it is an intersection of education, local community coming together, and disability justice needs getting addressed. And hopefully in this presentation, I'll be able to demonstrate all three of those aspects for you today. So what is a CPAC? So it stands for Special Education Parent Advisory Council. It's a local parent-driven advisory group within a local district. So it's at the district level. Also, in this presentation, I'm going to refer again and again to parents. And really, to me, that's a quick shorthand for caregivers, families. We recognize that there are all different kinds of ways to be families, and this is a shorthand for me that makes it easier to speak about it. But please know that when I'm talking about a CPAC and when I'm referring to parents, I mean a broader category of caregivers, families, guardians, legal arrangements, anything that is involved in an adult who cares for a young person. So CPACs provide parent voice and input at the systems level for special education issues. And I'll get more into that in a minute. So they are advisory. We don't make policy. We don't set policy. We're not offshoots of school boards. We're not elected. It's a purely voluntary organization. Um, CPACs give collective input beyond individual planning. So many of our members, um, their main motivation for organizing the CPAC is, they're having a frustrating time uh, navigating the school processes, and coming together amplifies those issues, helps build trust, um, and we'll get more into that in a minute. I just want to say also, in different states and different regions of the country, they go by different names, a CAC, a CEAC, but the prevailing term is CPAC. Okay, so what's the function? What's the purpose of CPACs? So the primary purpose is to advise district leaders on policies, programs, and practices affecting students with disabilities. CPACs help identify the unmet needs and to recommend solutions. They support improving educational outcomes and the overall district culture. We see, for example, there's just still a lot of ableism built into these systems. And I think that as one of the more successful functions of a CPAC is to have those conversations around um, ableism, um, terms, empathy, just all of those kind of things. It's a good incubator for those topics. And then ideally, they help transform individual family experiences into systems level insight. So how do CPACs work? So they're volunteer organizations. As I said, they are district based. So my district is CVSD, Champlain Valley School District. In Vermont, we have 119 school districts currently. We have a mission statement. Our core membership is parents, caregivers. It can also include school staff, teachers, and community members. Meetings are held regularly to gather input and discuss priorities. So, for instance, our CPAC meets monthly, and then we have ad hoc meetings as necessary. Um, we pull together outreach strategies. I think it's really important to, as a group that has differing access needs, I think it's really important to encompass those and address those differing access needs by trying to vary the meeting times, maybe include translation services to help engage families in all of their varying needs. And I think that's a point that we're always going to be aspiring to. Like we are never going to fully meet the needs. We will always be striving to meet the needs. CPACs build collaboration and partnerships with district leaders. We have relationships now with leaders within our district that weren't there a year ago, which is really encouraging. So how do we turn input into action? So if the group is coming together, how do we turn what we're talking about into actionable items? So the input that we gather is structured and intentional. CPACs, the most successful CPACs will come together annually and set key priorities, usually 1 to 3 issues that are timely. And then that helps focus the efforts for the year. That helps drive the reporting, and it helps guide the conversations so that they don't sort of veer off into individual pet issues. So they analyze input for patterns that indicate systemic issues. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Our recommendations are delivered to district decision makers. So in our case, we have a deliverable of an annual report, and I'll talk more about that later. It allows for having a deliverable like a report allows for follow-up, documenting progress, and assuring accountability and impact. If we have something written, we have a trail, and we'll be able to, double back, say, hey, have you thought about points 1 through 10? Are you making progress on points 1 through 3? What are the impacts of, the top recommendation we have, and so on and so forth. So how do CPACs advance disability justice? So with a CPAC, you're elevating parent voices and lived experience that didn't have another channel. And through that, we're influencing policy. We help make special education more inclusive, equitable, and responsive, which benefits all families, not just special education families. By focusing on systemic trends, we're addressing barriers that affect many students, not just individual issues. And through this process, we're facilitating trust building, especially into a climate where these parents have lost faith, have lost trust in the system. And then we're promoting a shared leadership model with mutual respect in educational decision making. So what are the benefits of an effective CPAC? So again, It's increasing parental engagement um, in a mode that isn't a parent-teacher organization or a school board. It's much more directed towards special education policy discussions. There's improved communication between the families and the district administrators. And certainly in our partnership with CVSD, we've had some bumpy moments and come through those. And I could talk about that a little bit too specifically in a minute. Better identification and responsiveness to community needs. Um, instead of a bunch of free radical parents in their own lanes individually trying to push for changes for their own kids, it's elevating an interconnection of needs. There's collaborative problem solving, and it replaces adversarial interactions. And also, CPACs contribute to positive systemic exchanges that benefit all students. And so that first part of the presentation, a lot of that comes from this resource. This is called Advocacy in Action, a guide to local special education parent advisory councils. And this was really the Bible that we used as we were forming our CPAC. It has a ton of information in terms of statistics, things to think about, how to communicate, how to organize. It's really a great Bible. I encourage anybody to go and take a look at it when you have some time. Okay, so how did CVSD CPAC get started? Now we're getting into the fun stuff. So this announcement ran in the district newsletters for the month of April 2024. This parent is a Heinsberg parent. And this went out, it ran for a full month in April. And from that, we fielded 7 families. And so in the summer of 2024, we formed an interest group and we met for the first time at the end of May. We pulled in the founders of Essex Westford CPAC, Katie Ballard and Sandra Chittenden, to advise us in that meeting. It was really helpful. They were the ones who pointed us towards that Advocacy in Action Bible. So we also in that interest meeting had from the beginning the buy-in of some key people within CVSD, specifically our superintendent, Adam Bunting, and our director of student support services, Anna Cooperthwaite. And I cannot emphasize enough how lucky we were to have their buy-in right from the beginning. That has made things so much easier. It's set a really cordial tone. And the fact that we have their ear has been really, really helpful. And then what they get from us is it's an easy pipeline to getting feedback. Hey, we made this change. Is it working? Most recently, so there's a survey that goes out to IEP families, and it traditionally has a really low response rate. And so Anna Cooperthwaite came to us and said, like, hey, can you raise a flag that it's important for families to fill this out? It's a key funding pipeline. And so we were able to hit our list and attempt to raise that rate. It's going to take a little while for an appreciable raise, but that was an example of us kind of working together both ways. And so also in the summer of 2024, the first thing we did was we pulled from some sample mission statements and we came up with this. The mission of the Champlain Valley Union School District Special Education Parent Advisory Council, CPAC, is to facilitate authentic and effective communication, understanding, and mutual respect that is meaningfully inclusive of all students, caregivers, educators, administrators, school board members, and the community at large to guide the school district in providing access to and delivery of high quality, equitable services and instruction for students who qualify for additional support. So that was a mouthful, but what it came down to is this is what we believe. This is how we want to conduct ourselves. This is what we put forward. So in the fall and winter of 2024, we convened a bylaws working group. I was a key part of that. I wrote the first draft of the bylaws using AI, and it was really helpful. I have experience writing legalese, and so I was able to kind of construct the prompts in a way that got me what I wanted without having to do what I would have done, which was just kind of like Frankenstein from other examples. I did go out and look at, so in Vermont, we have two other CPACs. We are the third CPAC to form. There's Essex, Westford, and there is Addison. I did look at both of their bylaws. Actually, I looked at Addison's bylaws. I'm not sure if Essex Westford had their bylaws available at that time, which is an interesting commentary because that group, my thinking, my feeling about that was they had issues that they just wanted to jump right into, and they decided that they would figure out kind of the legalese later. And it's funny because from that you start to see each CPAC kind of has its own character and its own way of doing things, which is interesting to me. So we threw everything into the bylaws that to prompt discussion. I think in the early drafts we had 6 different committees, and we just threw everything into that document as a way to kind of prompt discussions. So the way that we structured it is we have voting members and non-voting members. The voting members are the parents and caregivers. The non-voting members are administrators. We certainly also have caregivers who straddle both sides. They work in the district and also have kids. They get to be voting members. Our executive committee is a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and a communications officer. And then each school in the district, we have at least one school community liaison. I'm a school community liaison for Shelburne Community School. And basically what I do is I try to go to the PTO meetings. I try to keep communication lines open with the administration there, and just try to kind of raise the profile of the group whenever we can. Let's see. So we have 2 active committees. We have the communications committee and we have a data and policy committee. We hold our elections in spring. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a deliverable, which is an annual report to CVSD leadership. I want to take a minute to talk about the rights and responsibilities that we put together. Like the mission, I feel really attached to these rights and responsibilities because it sets the tone. It lets us know who we are, that we don't have to be We don't have to bring any particular knowledge or training to it, that all are welcome. And so I'm going to take a minute and go over these really quickly. So members don't need special training or background knowledge to belong. Members are entitled to attend all meetings and participate in discussions. Members are expected to contribute constructively to discussions, respect differing opinions, and uphold the council's mission and values. Members shall commit to looking at systemic issues, that is, challenges and opportunities that affect more than one student or family. Members shall uphold confidentiality at all times. That's a really important one for us. Members shall not publish information, articles, announcements, newspaper editorials, letters, or public testimonials under the CPAC name without group consensus. So in 2025, the CPAC passed bylaws in May, and we elected our first board in June. Now, right as all of this was happening, Act 73 passed, and we went from kind of being a group that was just forming to wanting to respond to all of the changes happening. So when Act 73 passed, we felt obligated to try to make sense out of the landscape for our families and to advocate for our voices to be included in that discussion. And so because of that, we took some actions. In September, we sent a letter to Secretary Saunders asking to increase parental input at every level. We did not get a response from her. In October, we drafted a joint statement with CVSD to address the unprecedented uncertainty our families face. That was an interesting moment for our CPAC. Our superintendent has a wonderful way of communicating. I think he has a really strong moral clarity that comes through, and he comments on that in his communications to the district. And so when that joint statement came through, it went through the individual school weekly newsletters. And so in our newsletter, it came 10 announcements down. And when I saw that, I was not excited about that. And I reached out to Adam Bunting and said, oh, I really had hoped that this would be a statement going out under your banner with your commentary behind it. And he realized immediately, to his credit, that they had made a mistake in how they rolled that statement out. And they corrected it. And what we learned from that is that our platform as a CPAC does not compete to the superintendent's platform. And so really, for now, if we want a bullhorn, it needs to go through our superintendent and our leaders in the schools. And I think that was a really helpful thing to go through and to problem solve and to come to a good have a good reconciliation around that, how that happened. In December, Palace gave a presentation on the Vermont special education landscape to our voting members. This was a very similar presentation to that which she gave to this group in November. And
October.
October. Thank you. As soon as I heard that presentation, I thought our CPAC needs to hear this. And so we were really fortunate that Palace could do that for us. And it was really well received. And then, so because we're still in our infancy, really one of the most important things for us right now is getting the word out. We can't be in those IEP meetings. We can't be in those 504 meetings. There are a lot of barriers to being able to communicate to our audience. And so we have to kind of communicate to the entire district in order to get the 15% of us that are on, or maybe closer to 25% who are involved in special education plans. Um, and so we started tabling at school and community events. We published a website, which we're really excited about. And then we've been advertising in Front Porch Forum, posting flyers, just trying to be out there, consistent, persistent. Um, yeah. So some of the lessons that we learned. So from the beginning, we were advised it's going to take a year. It's going to take a year to get the bylaws written, your first board elected, priorities set. And because we knew it would take that long, it really helped us set the pace and expectations. We weren't pushing too hard. We weren't slacking off. I kind of talked about this before, but we really use the mission, vision, and bylaws to get conversations going. I think our particular group, I think it was, we were all bringing very different issues, disabilities, concerns to the table. And it was hard to sort of get those conversations started because, um, someone who maybe has a kid with autism is going to have a different experience, different needs, different outlook than a kid who maybe has a more physical disability. And so using those mechanics of the mission, vision, and bylaws to kind of get conversation started was really helpful for us as a group. I kind of touched on this before, but having the administration buy-in from day one is massive. It is probably the single biggest advantage that we have in our district. And I think because it's set in place now that if there are leadership changes, I think we have the strength to keep that buy-in consistent and ongoing. One of the things that we're continually confronting is capacity challenges. We're a group of folks who, along with, the daily challenges of life and parenting, we also have the added challenges of trying to navigate disabilities, and all of that is going to affect capacity. And so kind of realizing that we can only move as fast as our circumstances allow has been helpful. There have definitely been moments where, somebody says yes to a project and then says, oh guys, my nurse quit. Can someone else pick this up? And someone else picks it up. And so that's been really great. I think in this current landscape between the Federal Education Department, Act 73, kind of the general instability of the education landscape, scope has been a big challenge for us. We really want to be in the mix, and we're constantly trying to assess, is the thing that we want to respond to in this moment part of the scope of the CPAC? And I think asking that question helps us clarify our goals, clarify our intentions, clarify our reach. Um, a consistent presence in the community is important. Again, I think that just goes back to communication and awareness and letting letting these families know that we're here, that we are that we're an asset, and that um, we have the ability to lift up their voices. Um, and then lastly, what we have found and what we are finding is get access to the raw data. So particularly for our policy and data committee, I think it's helpful to notice what is available to data mine and what isn't available, because it tells you what the school thinks is important to study and what they don't think is important to study. And because chances are we're going to be shedding light to them on things that we know are important to study that they haven't had the capacity to look at yet. Um, and through that you can identify kind of those systemic weaknesses. So that is the conclusion. I kind of flew through that, but I wanted to be able to leave lots of time for questions, leave time for reflections. I know it's a lot of information. And then if there's time left over, we have next steps to propose. So thank you very much. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to take this off of screen sharing.
You actually did perfectly on timing there, just as we had
Woohoo!
scheduled. I guess I have a question, Liz, and I'll start, and anyone else can jump in too. But I'm curious what your thoughts are about why in Vermont we have so few CPACs currently. What do you think the barriers are to creating them? Is it about a lack of just knowing what they are and their function, or are there other systemic barriers that make it difficult, which obviously you've overcome? But
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I I think partially they are uh, they're not known here. I think I heard about what a CPAC is through relentlessly researching things, and then it was a confluence of Aaron's email came in kind of right as I was understanding what a CPAC is. I think also New Jersey and Massachusetts have CPACs enshrined in the law. And it's interesting if anybody here has any experience coming from those states. I've heard all kinds of feedback from, not every CPAC is the same. um, and I think what's interesting is the movement that is happening here is a grassroots movement of parents raising up and saying, we need a better voice than we have. We need a better pipeline than we have. And so it's causing these groups to kind of organically form rather than having a law mandate these groups. And so these groups have more engagement, they're more invested potentially. And I think that I think there is a lot of potential for district CPACs to form to their districts. Vermont has a really wide ranging needs. We have We have towns, we have cities, we have rural. Everybody kind of has different needs, and every district schools have evolved organically to the needs of those communities. And I think that's why there's such a backlash to Act 73 right now, because all of those towns are reacting to wait, we have the school that we want to have, and we have the services that we the way that we want to have them. Why do we need to conglomeratize this process? And I think CPACs, again, in kind of this vacuum of leadership, can be a group that is lifting voices that are otherwise very much going to be marginalized through Act 73, through the marginalization of the at the federal level. We need these leaders to come up now. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we might be at a tipping point where there's more awareness in the past year, and I don't know if it's because of efforts like the effort you have to you've established the CPAC in, I think it's the largest district in the state, and
Yeah.
I think CPACs are getting more attention. I know that, and I haven't even updated you on this, Liz, but in the past week I got an email that South Burlington is starting a CPAC, and I had nothing
Woo!
to do with it. So you know, so I think that obviously there is more awareness today, but I guess it'll be interesting to see if that materializes in actually getting groups off the ground or not. And it'll be interesting to see you know um, what barriers different communities face in actually trying to make this happen institutionally. I see that we have Tracy's hand is up,
Yeah.
so Tracy, feel free to
There's
jump
a,
in.
and afterwards, there's a couple questions in the chat just to bookmark that.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to comment that we actually moved here 2 years ago. Well, this is the second school year here from New Jersey, and I don't have my camera on because I'm sorry, I'm making dinner. And what you said was I think somebody said I don't know if they're all consistent, whatever. They're pretty vastly different from district to district in New Jersey, and um, uh, they're lots of pretty drastically different, mainly based on socioeconomic level of the district. And I don't know what my point was going to be, but I don't know how I actually missed that there was a CPAC here, because coming in, even though the laws are federal for 504, it's still very different from district to district. And I'm glad I found you guys, because we came in, my daughter has a 504, and it's just been good and bad. But I think for me, it's been kind of learning about, even though I understood these laws in New Jersey, some things feel different here. So I'm not sure if I added anything to that, but I worked a lot with the CPAC at our old district. And this was the point I wanted to make. One of the things with the CPAC in our old district was it almost felt like sometimes there was animosity actually between the district and CPAC. Like on the surface, everybody was friends and got, and pretended to get along, and the district people would attend, sessions that we had and stuff. But really, there was kind of some tension, and it sounded like that isn't the case here, which is great. That there isn't that Adam Bunting, and talking about CVU, is willing and happy to work with CPAC. Is that kind of how you all feel? Or is that kind of, or are you guys just still too new to really know what that relationship is going to look like?
Oh, Tracy, thank you so much for your commentary. I think it's really interesting to hear about your experience in New Jersey. So yeah, I think I can comment that I think we got really lucky with the leadership at CVSD. They seem open and committed to accountability. we have not yet delivered our annual report to them. And so that's gonna be, I think, where the rubber meets the road about this, when we start laying down intentions that we can then follow up on and follow through with. I think that's going to be a test for the group. But so far, I think we've been able to be keep it positive, keep it cordial, and I do have a sense that the group of special educators within CVSD are committed to trying to trying to listen and improve processes. And that is more than we've gotten from other systems levels groups within Vermont. So I'm encouraged by that. I can also say that I know that it's not always the case. So we are the third CPAC in Vermont, but really all of these CPACs have only formed in the last 3 years. I think Essex Westford just formed. So we're all baby CPACs. I also understand that there's more tension in the Addison County CPAC, and that has been a real challenge for them. They're struggling to get heard. They're struggling to raise up their platform, and I think having more CPACs in Vermont will help strengthen the CPACs that are struggling, because they'll be able to say, see, CVSD is getting things done. See, Essex Westford is getting things done. See, South Burlington is getting things done. And we'll be able to look at case studies within Vermont. Also, I think I've heard that Bennington is in the process of starting a CPAC, so that will be really interesting to watch as well. It's another big district. Yeah, thank you so much for your commentary, Tracy. I really appreciate it. Let's
Should we go to
see.
the questions in the chat? It's Cray asked, are people with disabilities non-parents voting members or non-voting members?
That's a great question. The way that we had structured it is you need to be a parent or guardian to be a voting member. That's not to say that we are not taking, that we're not taking influence or ideas from the non-members. I think what we wanted to make sure of was we wanted to make sure that the district representatives were not driving the car. And that was the way that we structured that.
Kate asks, have higher ability transition counselors or VFN been able to help get the word out in your district?
Oh, those are great questions too. I haven't thought about higher ability. I will bring that to our communications counselor. That's a great idea. We have been in touch with VFN, and some key folks at VFN have been helping us sort of structure some of our external communications. They helped us with the letter to Zoe Saunders. And I think there are definitely some already established advertising pipelines that we could be doing a better job partnering with. And those are great ideas.
I kind of want to go back to, we were talking about, and you touched on it, Liz, a little bit about how some states have CPACs as a legislative mandate and how there could be pros and cons to that. And you mentioned sort of the benefit of having a group of motivated parents come together and make this happen and kind of design it the way that they think will work in their community. But of course, the alternative is, maybe some communities don't have any CPACs because that magic moment of parents coming together who have a capacity, knowledge, skills, understanding of CPACs to do that is not there at that particular moment, which is hard for all the families in that district. So I guess, like, where do you come out overall on whether a legislative mandate would be helpful or not in the state of Vermont? What are alternatives that you, if not, are there alternatives that you envision just to like create an ecosystem where parents have more access and voice? And I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I can make a quick comment on it. I think that's a great question. I think it's a complex question. I think we have baby CPACs, and we're still kind of figuring it out, and we're figuring it out in a very challenged landscape right now. And it's hard to know whether kind of more organically forming CPACs versus a legislative mandate, what the pros and cons would bring. I think that I want to recognize that I think there's a layer of privilege in being able to participate in a CPAC. You have to have time, you have to have capacity, you have to have, interest and motivation. You have to be willing to compromise and be willing to work. And, that takes a lot of higher order skills that very tired parents maybe are lacking. And so, and I think it also it depends on the resources that each district has or doesn't have. And I think this is all to say, I don't have a clean answer one way or the other. I would love to see what like another 2 years of organically forming CPACs, what that would look like in this moment in Vermont. But at the same time, if it were mandated, we would instantly have 119 leadership opportunities and voice uplifting opportunities. Yeah, let's see. Kit Harrington asked a question. Is there any sort of ongoing coordination or communication across CPACs around the state? That is a great question. There is not anything formal. Recently, so there is a state level special education advisory council. You have to be named to sit on it, and I attended the most recent one, and that was kind of an informal oral interview of the formation of the Essex Westford CPAC. And that was probably, and in that meeting, people said like, oh, we should really be writing this down. We should really be writing all of our best practices down. And everyone just kind of said, yeah, we really should be. And then we moved on. So, it would be in this moment of having, baby CPACs, I think it would be really interesting to collect the stories of why these parent leaders are stepping forward, of what motivates them, of the issues that are important to them. I think there's some real opportunity for like more collective action through that particular uniting of the CPACs that are currently formed.
I don't know. I'm curious if your CPAC or you've heard of like the state CPAC, like taking any position or responding in a formal way about like Act 73 and what they're hoping comes out of the legislative session. Is that something that's come up in discussion?
Um, I'm our CPAC, I can say, is concerned about Act 73. I think, the landscape is changing so much that we're trying to understand it. We're also trying to kind of communicate it to our community in clear ways, and that is a challenge in and of itself. And also kind of with the understanding that like Act 73 could go away and we could have something new, because it's just very unclear what's happening. The state level CPAC, I can't speak specifically to what positions, if any, they've taken, because I haven't interacted with them enough. But I imagine that it would be um, an easy email to see if they have a formal position on it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I was curious because I know some local school boards are taking positions now. And I mean, maybe it's more about coming to a position enough to inform the school board before, in some cases, before they issue their position statement. I, I just watched the South Burlington School District put out a position to statement that they are in favor of consolidation, which was interesting to see. And I think that they came to that without a whole lot of community input, and it kind of
Yeah.
highlighted for me like where a CPAC could have been helpful in providing a different perspective that I think was missing from that conversation. I do realize that a lot of other districts are coming out with the opposite opinion through their boards. But I was curious if that had kind of been any kind of conversation you guys had um, up to this
Yeah,
point.
and I think I can speak for CBSD CPAC that, really one of the things that we were trying to take a position on was, hey, get more parent input, folks. And it seems we're not even getting a response, to that level of position. So like we're still fighting for a seat at the table. And I think, if we had another year or 2 years under our belt, we'd be able to be like more responsive to this and more able to more quickly assess the situation and put statements out. Like we're still sort of like learning how to be an organization and learning like where our power is and where to push the buttons on that power. And I think we'll probably be in that, still figuring that out for the next year. I think that's going to be like a major growing pain for us as an organization.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, Act 73 is also an existential threat to the organization itself.
Yeah, we're definitely having like a dark humor of like we might have to rename ourselves, we might have to dissolve and reform, like, and it's just too soon to tell, too soon to know.
So, I think kind of recapping for the people who are new on this call to this group, we had met a couple of times in the fall and tried to figure out what our goals as a group were, and like kind of we came up with a lot of ideas, but the one that rose to the surface as the top priority was supporting the creation of CPACs across the state, because like we felt that that was an important avenue for um, bringing a lot of the other concerns we have to the policymakers and decision makers that are actually shaping the day-to-day experience for students and families. So I just was curious for us to maybe broaden this conversation. Whoever else wants to come in and just do a temperature check and make sure that after Liz's presentation, we're all still feeling like that is a good goal for this group to have. And if it is, I think we should talk about what we could do to continue to advance that call. Both advance that cause, both in terms of like what we do at our next meeting, but also like what we do in our communities to push this forward. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay. So I will say from my perspective, I was excited about CPACs and their potential when we first talked about them. And the more I've thought about it, the more I think that is the avenue to go with what we're, with our limited capacity as a group. I think it really makes a lot of sense. And I think Liz's presentation reaffirms that for me. How's everyone else feeling?
I just had a question. If I feel like the group had also expressed interest in kind of like tracking and giving, like doing some organizing around like Act 73. Maybe I'm mistaken. I have to look back at the notes, but I don't know if there'd
Oh
be like
yeah,
multiple priorities or if that would still stand you.
yeah. I mean, I think that, and I also have some updates with regards to that. But I mean, I think where we came out, and this was, and actually Liz was right. I was looking at my calendar. My presentation was in November, early November, but we had talked about that was a high priority, but I think we had felt at the time that our capacity to make a significant difference in that space, given the timeline and all that we thought was going to be
Yeah, makes sense.
involved, was not something that we felt like we had the capacity to make our
Makes
top
sense.
priority, although I think we all feel that it's very important and critical. But subsequently to that meeting, it was actually one of the most amazing things that happened because of this group was that after I gave that presentation in November, Liz had communicated with one of the co-founders in her CPAC, and because of him and some other fact about my presentation and to invite me to come in, I got in communication with him, and he had just joined a legislative advisory committee to advise state senators on special education policy in the upcoming legislative session. When I found out about that group, I connected with them and I also joined. And then they wanted somebody from Southern Vermont who was an educator to join as well. So I invited Cray, or I suggested Cray, and Cray joined the group as well. And so Liz's co-founder, myself, Cray, and also some other educators throughout the state, some other parent advocates, we met for 2 hours a week between the first week of December and we're still meeting. We just last week drafted proposed policy to and sent it to a handful of senators who are spearheading some of the education efforts right now. We are waiting to hear back with their responses to our proposals, some of which are fairly controversial, I will say. But it has given me some hope about elevating many of the issues that we discussed here to the consciousness of the senators who are making the decisions. I think we've been fairly clear-eyed as a committee, as a group, about our potential to affect positive change, which is that despite access to some of these influential decision makers, there is a very limited political appetite right now for actually doing right by students, especially the vulnerable student population we're talking about, because it's all about money, which was the point of what I had presented in November, that is really the driver here. at the same time, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to put some of those problems forward and also propose some real solutions that if even if we could get a couple of them through, it could make a really big difference for some families and students. So um, this is all to say there are some things that have come out of this group already that are influencing policy. Um, and I will add in the long list of things that we put into that proposed policy, um, encouraging the creation of CPACs across the state was also written into that. And so that was one of many things that we have included. And I will say that the people on this in this group, and I'm very fortunate to have had the opportunity to be a part of it. Um, I was skeptical going in because I've been in a lot of groups where there's been a lot of internal discord and we spend the whole time just arguing and not doing anything. Um, I have been incredibly impressed with the people in this group, the alignment that we have, and that's particularly rare when we're talking about a group that is a mix of parents and educators, because a lot of the time there have historically been a lot of tensions, and yet somehow with this particular group we found common ground and we were able to come to a consensus enough to draft this document, which I think is remarkable. So and again, I would say that the proposal that Cray and I both put forward was largely aligned with conversations that we had here. So that's a hopeful. I'm sorry to get a little sidetracked here with my original question, but I did want to update everyone. Um,
I'm so glad that you did a little update on that because I was very curious about it. So I do want to kind of continue to be able to get more feedback from this group, but so when Palace and I were first getting together to kind of frame out the today's meeting, the we said, well, what should the next steps be? And the thought that I had is, boy, it would be really cool. And I was taking some influence from the work that the Education Justice Coalition has done on the bullying kit. And I think that it would be a really helpful deliverable that no one else is doing to tell the oral histories of the formations of these groups, to think about um, collating best practices, to take the learning from these early forming groups vis-a-vis Vermont, because so that that advocacy and action Bible does a lot of the work of helping to put the skeleton in place for forming a CPAC. But what I think is needed is the flavor of Vermont communities um, in some kind of um, documented way. And so, that would be my proposal, would be for this group to do the work of sort of putting an action kit together on how to form a CPAC in Vermont. I'm just curious about like what people think of that. Um, if that's something that we think we could put energy towards, or if that's completely not workable. I'm just curious.
Well, I think that it's not that sounds great, like telling the stories in the toolkit. The only thing I'm thinking about with this being a focus of the group is if you dash we wanted to be a group with like family members, parents, students, and educators, the educators and students might not feel like it's a space for them because the project is focused on a project for family members. So just and that's okay. Like maybe the group decides that, oh, it like makes sense. I don't know. It still makes sense. We wanted to prioritize it, but just recognizing, I think that there were some students that had come a little bit, had expressed a bit of interest. There's some educators, and they might feel like, oh, I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm just thinking about, do you want to choose project that um, would have kind of equal interest to all those groups, or if it's less. Anyways, just recognizing that as kind of a, not saying that it's not important. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that it's it's a conversation that we've definitely been having because I think in some ways the intention of a CPAC is to provide a community voice into district policy making, but it is weighted slightly more heavily towards parent and caregiver voice. I don't think exclusively, but there is some power dynamic there that I can understand might feel not as equitable as maybe some other structures. And at the same time, because CPACs are part of a larger organization, it's kind of hard to like fully transcend that barrier within the structure. Um, and I think like there's some other things that are happening, and I right now that are actually something that I'm involved in currently, that is not specifically related to special education, but it is related to elevating student voice. Is that there is some legislation going through at the state level about um, student representation on school boards,
Mm.
um, which is actually quite interesting because um, as it so happens, I grew up in a district in which is the only district in the United States that has a student board member with full voting rights. And I was that student board member when I was in high school, so I was covered in the national media for that role. And so this student group has reached out to me and has been asking for my opinion about
Mm.
this legislative because they know that I held this role. And that's not specifically special education related, but if that legislation passed, it actually is it would be such an amazing, they want to create full voting student members in every single school board in
Mm.
the state, which is an amazing thing. And um, while that in and of itself wouldn't necessarily bring all the issues that this group has to the table, I mean, I think that it's actually a really great connection or collaborator that could work in tandem with an organization like a CPAC to really bring like a broader set of voices to the table. And I think we should kind of think about those connections. I am not total. I don't want to like broaden the focus of the group though so much that we go beyond our capacity for what we can realistically achieve with the number of people who are regular attendees here. So that's the other thing that I'm balancing. But I also just want to reaffirm how important I think it is to make sure that all of these different holders have a seat at the table.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and I wasn't, just to clarify, I wasn't critiquing the CPACs themselves. Like, I think I understand them and they make sense. I was more saying that if that's the direction the group wants to go, then you might not see a lot of like participation and attendance from students,
From
for
a
example,
wider,
or from
yeah.
educators, because they might feel like, oh, this project isn't really that relevant to me. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe they will, but anyway, I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes sense because it's really parent focused, which is fine. Again, like I think it makes sense that there is a space for family
Well,
members to advocate. Um,
I guess
oh, I think you're, yeah, I can't quite hear. I don't know if it's just me. Sorry.
also ask, can you hear me? So can you hear me now?
Oh,
A little garbled.
Is it back? No.
That's
yep.
I can hear you now. Before it
Oh,
was
okay.
not.
I apologize. It says I have an unstable connection. I'm curious, Alyssa, like what would be the types of issues that you think or topics that would engage those members of this group? And I'm asking that broadly so we can maybe figure out whether there is a way that we can keep those people engaged and achieve a broader goal in the capacity
Yeah,
of this
no,
meeting.
it's a good question. I think that I can go back to those meeting notes. I feel like we had a meeting where we did like a go around and heard from everybody. And I think that,
Yeah.
do you know, I can go back and look at those notes. So I don't want to, yeah. I I can't exactly remember, but I do know that again, the state advocacy, which again may not make sense to take on because of capacity. There may have been something around like training interests. But I can go look at those notes and see what was like a theme. And again, I'm not saying it's like the wrong choice to make. I'm just kind of like recognizing that it may have that unintended effect, if that makes sense.
I mean, I have recollections
Yeah.
of the student voice, and I don't want to speak for them at all. I'm just trying to remember. Like, I think, the values that have been important have been, um, you know, justice, um, kind of recognizing the intersection of like climate justice within this, um, just kind of the intersectionality of of multiple domains of justice within this, and I think I think that is something where I think we could incorporate in this project student voice. Like, I think part of this project could be the question
Mhm.
of CPACs. How do you listen to your
Yeah.
students?
Mhm.
How do you listen to the community? How do you bring them in? Because I'm not sure that that's a question that the CPACs are have the capacity to look at
Mhm.
necessarily
Mhm.
right now. So I can say that, CVSD CPAC right now, we're 7 families. We were motivated because our kids kind of lack the voice. They're young, or part of their disability means that they can't advocate as directly as the parents can. And so that was kind of a big motivator. But just thinking about Palace's commentary, like, I don't see a lot of student um, students who are disabled. I don't see them getting a lot of opportunities for leadership and for voice within the structures that are available. And if
Mhm.
that's something that, like, we could examine and elevate, I think that's important. I think that's really important.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm curious if there are any examples of CPACs that allow voting, give voting rights to high school students who get involved or things like that, like, and whether that's something that could be
And I
explored.
don't have that information. I think there are avenues for being able to reach out for that. There's a person in the advocacy in action book, and I think her name is like Linda, not even joking.
Mhm.
And that was a person who's kind of like the person to consult on CPACs in the country. And I remember hearing that Katie Ballard had extensive conversations with that person, and that would be a good person to reach out to. Um, if we wanted to move forward on this, I think that would be a good resource.
Yeah, I mean, I think that these are really important questions, and I think that if we could approach this toolkit from a lens of making sure and as like a goal that any structure that we create, any guidance we give to districts really elevates the fact that we need to make sure that there's representation and voice of
Mhm.
students and those who are affected by the decisions, and also um, people in the community with lived experience who may have perspectives that are
Hmm.
also worthwhile, and trying to be critical in the way that we um, design CPACs to make sure that those voices are being heard.
Hmm.
I don't know right now like what exactly a more inclusive CPAC would necessarily look like, but I think that even if we raise those issues in the toolkit, like
Hmm.
knowing that CPACs are forming, like that is what's happening right now, like we actually could do a lot of good to make them better and more inclusive.
Cool. I did find the what's it called? I don't know if you all are able to see this, that slide deck. I did a little digging here, but I don't know if you look at the link on slide 13. This was when I think Craig led us through. We did like idea generation and voting. And I
Yeah.
think that some of the top ones were like creating leadership opportunities and connection for youth with disabilities, which I actually think Kate LaRose, who's on here, is doing a lot of that work. Helping students, families, teachers, administrators, school communities understand rights and best teaching practices for students with disabilities. Effects of education reforms on students with disabilities, and intersectional affinity spaces for disabled youth and families. And I'll read one more that was kind of like, I think these are in order of interest. Schools treat ableism with the same understanding and seriousness as other forms of bias. So those were
Mhm.
some other interest topics, I think.
I mean, I could see this being a conduit for tackling
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
questions.
Makes sense. Cool. I gotta jump off soon. Do we want to choose? I was thinking choosing a date and facilitator for the next meeting.
So,
Do we have?
um, yeah, so for the next meeting, it sounds like we need to do some more discussion, and potentially I could pull more resources together. For example, I could pull potentially pull Katie Ballard in, uh, or maybe Cray could maybe we could connect with Cray to get a disability justice perspective um, into this. Um,
I
Yeah,
think
I definitely
Katie
don't want to like
Ballard
derail the. I don't mean to derail the project. I was just more asking questions.
I think
yeah.
Katie Ballard would be an excellent person to bring in for numerous reasons into this group for to both to discuss CPAC, since Katie is really an expert on CPACs and is involved with the state level CPAC. But Katie was also one of the co-chairs of the legislative advisory group that I had mentioned. So
Mhm.
for
Okay.
any of us who have questions about what's happening with the legislator, Katie really, I mean, I would say much more than me is involved on a day-to-day level in following that, and I think could provide value in multiple ways to this group. But I think that like um, I'd also say Katie's a huge advocate for CPACs and understanding what their potential could be
Hmm.
in the state. So like if we're still exploring that question, I think Katie would be a great resource.
So I think also when we attempted to have this meeting, when was this? In December.
Hmm.
Was it, I think Christine Gaynor Patterson stepped up and said and volunteered to be a leader. And so I could ping her and see if she would be able to co-lead with
Yeah,
me. And I think she has CPAC experience as well. And I think she knows Katie Ballard as well. Um, so that's a direction that we could go in terms of agenda for the next meeting.
sounds great. I just have one logistical thing. I think I might be able to be there for the start of the meeting, but I have like two other kind of back-to-back meetings tonight that overlap. I don't know if any of you, or I can also ask Christine, have access to a Zoom, just because otherwise I have like overlapping. I need to use it at 5. I don't know if that makes sense.
I have a full version. I know
Oh,
this is my
cool.
very first meeting,
Yeah.
and but I'm happy to, if somebody wants to reach out to me afterwards, I'm happy to set up the meeting and send out the invites if somebody can just talk to me about that offline.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think I have your email, so I'll reach out to you about that.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks.
Mhm. Cool. Sounds good. And then I don't know if the only other thing is because I've been kind of helping send out reminder emails, but I also like so I don't know if you want to communicate with me, Elizabeth, when you want the reminder email to go out, or I can give you the emails to send because sometimes it's nice to send it once there's like maybe not a full agenda, but like a focus of what there's going to be. So I don't know if you want me to play that role or send you the emails just so we have good communication and like warning
Yeah.
of the meetings.
Yeah. So I guess the question would be to the group. Like I know if Alyssa is sending me an email, I need to pay attention to it. I'm not sure that if somebody gets an email from me, if
Hmm.
they know to pay attention to it or not.
I'm happy to contact you maybe the week before. I'll just be like, I'm gonna send out the email. Let me know if you have an agenda or like a focus or any link. I just want to make sure that I'm both sending the email and also like sharing any preparation people need for the meeting. So I'll put a reminder for myself the week before to like tap you and to take lead on that, but like include any information you want in that.
So just confirming the regular pace of these meetings is the third Tuesday of the month. Are we right on that? So
Yeah, I
that,
think we skipped one just because I wanted to give a little more time because
yeah,
we had just gone back from break to do outreach. And
I,
and
I
Tracy,
think
thanks for
that's,
joining. We hope to see you at future
yeah.
meetings.
So I think, so we'll have, so this will be good. We have a little bit less of a gap in terms of, like marshaling the resources, but I don't think that'll be a problem. And then, um, yeah, we can go from there.
That's great. Yeah, and there are people that joined tonight, and I can get the back end data and add them because I think when
Nice.
people sign up for Zoom, I was like, "You want to join the group?" So we'll add a few more folks.
Nice.
All right.
Nice. Okay, this has been a really good meeting. Thank you, everybody, for your participation.
Thanks,
Thanks,
y'all.
Liz.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.